To conquer others is to have power. To conquer yourself is to know the way.
Back in the Bottle had problems right from the get-go, and I can't remember exactly what was going on, but I don't know if it was because, I look back on it and I can't really kind of put a finger on what the problem with Back in the Bottle was from a script development point, but it had 15 different hands in it. We would, whenever you get a script and there's problems with it, production problems, like, well, we can't do this because we can't build this set, or we don't have enough time to shoot this, or we got to move this location into this location. We'll give them notes and we'll send it back, and of course we always got the delay of dealing with the 2 time zones and stuff because all the writers were back here in the States. So we'd fire them off our changes. They would get it. It would take a day or so to translate it. Then it'd come back, and by then we've had other problems or we've solved certain problems. And so there was this constant, and for whatever reason, it was really particularly bad on this episode. And one thing which was also a problem was every time we sent it back or every time we got revisions, it came in from a different writer.
Yin Ling Ling, Day Ling Ling, Long San, Fai Yin Ying. Our minds are open to you, Green Dragon. May your formlessness take shape in our realm.
As with any of the shows that move to a different culture, we try and think of a treatment. In the case of Back in the Bottle, going to China, I chose to sort of give it like a very warm feel, a very oriental feel, and that is global. That's right through the whole show. So the camera was basically warmed with an effects filter called a coral filter, and then, as I say, that ran through the whole show. So basically it just feels like just a warmer, more humid, richer environment.
How, Su, so it was you who gave Khan the black powder.
And in turn to an entire legion of warriors, all of whom are prepared to die in the dragon's name. What are you prepared to die for, Xena?
Your mother's legacy and your sister's cause.
So you shall.
The episodes that have a cultural aspect to them are always really interesting for me because there's a wealth of reference to look at, and I always felt as the designer on Xena that I was like a bee, that I'd go to these different places and sort of be able to take aspects of reference from a particular culture or from a painting or from whatever it was, and then build that into the costumes for what our essentially fantasy show was.
I had a similar, with dealing with the two, Purity and Back in the Bottle, I had the same situation that I had with Sacrifice 1 and Sacrifice Part 2. And all I really did, well, thankfully, I was doing the second one, so I could watch their dailies. I sat in on some of the production meetings. I sat in on the read-through. I'd go when I could down to the set and just kind of watch and see how characters and stuff are developing. So the transition and stuff was really, by the time I got onto my show, was pretty easy. I knew the characters. I knew what they were doing. Directors don't really try to match each other's style because, well, the crew and the DP will kind of maintain a certain continuity to the look of a show.
End the war between the mind and the heart. Peace must be found within before it can be actualized.
What is she doing? Facing her death like a true warrior.
The Chinese episode is great. I mean, the reference, the Imperial costume reference, is fantastic, like really beautiful, intricate costumes, which we did draw on. Because we have had the action and fantasy element as well, we were able to take those shapes and styles and, you know, sort of take a sort of Chinese influence, if you like, but develop it into, you know, sort of our kind of action girl fighting costumes, which is what we did with the character of Pao Su, and also with Xena and Gabrielle in their Chinese costumes.
Any time that pyrotechnics are sort of involved in photography, the process becomes much more considered. It has to for the safety of the people on the set. And it's a much more expensive process, so we once again have to be much more considered about getting a result without actually having to redo, you know, too many takes, because that's going to become an expensive thing. The approach we would generally take in making sure that we bank the shot and get the pyrotechnics happening is to once again use a longer lens treatment where we can separate out the explosion, the background subjects, the midground subjects, our own hero subjects. The longer lens compresses them all and makes them sort of seem like they're much closer to being on the same plane. But obviously, you know, everyone's safe, and once again, with a narrowed angle of view, we know that the explosion is much more likely to happen in the place in the frame that we want it to happen.
Green Dragon, your humble servant Khan at your service.
Is my army ready?
They are prepared to carve your name onto the face of the world, or die trying.
That may not be necessary.
I think it was probably just miscast, and Rob raised flags to it right from the get-go. He just didn't feel, and I can't remember the actor's name for the life of me right now. He was just in The Matrix, but anyways, he kind of raised red flags about it right off the bat, but myself, Eric Grunderman, and Chloe Smith, we all kind of felt that, you know, no, this guy was good. And, you know, that's that right there, and it kind of plays into what I was saying in Animal Attraction with Anne-Maurice and Armand. When you have two actors that hit it off and the great rapport with each other, carrying or pretending to have a relationship and attraction to it is very easy.
The Chinese army and the Pao Su had sort of like an imperial empress costume with an elaborate headdress. Those were really fun. They were great, and yeah, I really enjoyed the richness of the colours and the textures of those fabrics that we used in that episode.
This was from the mind of Rob. You know, he loved the idea that Xena was responsible for these thousands of terracotta soldiers that were unearthed, and you know why Xena and how Xena kind of came about the decision to do it. I think it just was simply one of those it's us or them sort of thing. And I know she was really, intent on stopping this spread of the black powder and stuff. And, all of these soldiers had that knowledge of the black powder, and the only way to kind of stop it was to get rid of them all. So, yeah, it's certainly not a happy ending for those soldiers and their families. A lot of broken hearts there.